Joining us now on segment number 22 of the Instant Reaction podcast is our good friend Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Storm the Paint, which is the Fansided site of St. John's Red Storm. Tomorrow night, it will be the 11-1 St. John's Red Storm taking on the Villanova Wildcats, 6-5 in the Big East, down in the city of brotherly love from Finneran Pavilion. Kev, good to see you. How are things over in the Prudential Center where you are?
Yeah, I'm in the Prudential Center. Just finished calling a high school hockey game, so hopefully the music and the people around me don't get too loud and disrupt us. But I'm good. Glad to be with you guys. How you guys doing?
Yeah, pretty good so far. And of course, we are alongside our good friend Mike Szabo too. Mike, good to see you again, and it should be a fun one tomorrow. How are things over by you?
Doing well. Getting set for big time matchup. It seems like quietly become a big time matchup coming up tomorrow.
It's really crazy stuff to see what's going on too now. Obviously, St. John's, where they're 11-1. There's a lot of chatter, obviously, that this team could potentially be making we can call it a run, if you will, if they could take down Villanova tomorrow. We obviously know what happened down in Florida. Kev, you were down there at the I always call it the BB&T Center because that's what it was many years ago when I was down there. But Florida Live Arena is where you were down in Sunrise. First off, how was the atmosphere? I know the building is great. I was there for the NHL draft a few years ago, but the atmosphere, the game, and also the modern Fairleigh Dickinson court that you saw that the team was playing on.
Yeah, so, all right, first things first. I'll start with the game that you didn't ask me about. That was as close to March Madness as you could possibly get with Missouri and UCF. That was incredible. I guess since I'm in the building, I should bring it up. I think that was the second time I've ever seen a legit buzzer beater with no time left on the clock in my life. The first one being Shavar Reynolds, but we'll bring that up another day. Atmosphere, it was okay. Towards the end, it was a little more spirited. It was, in my opinion, there was more St. John's fans there than Florida State fans, and you'd kind of expect that. I mean, it's still 6 hours away by car, Florida State's campus in Tallahassee to Sunrise, and weekend in Florida for St. John's fans. So the atmosphere was fine. In terms of the game, I thought Florida State would play a lot closer. Just because they hadn't been winning, but they had been playing better. I know they came in a 2-game winning streak into the game against Louisville and South Carolina Upstate, big games. But they had played Virginia and Purdue a lot closer the weeks prior. So I thought they were going to play St. John's tougher. And one thing I think St. John's did really well in the first half is they got into the paint at will, specifically with David Jones. It was like somebody told him, you can dribble the ball into the paint at will. You don't have to chuck up 35-footers anymore. And that's what really St. John, that's how they built their lead. And then they got into Soriano, and then they had passing lanes open on the baseline, and it was easy offense in that first half. Second half, it was more the same. They went up 20, and then for whatever reason, Mike Anderson went zone. I don't know why he went zone. And it kind of allows a team to come back into the game because to beat the zone, you're going to shoot threes. And Florida State had 2 guys that didn't miss. So, and then he went back to man, and St. John's pulled away again and won comfortably. So all in all, it was a good game for St. John's. It was a game that it wasn't a must-win. It was a can't-lose just because Florida State's metrics. And they won it, and now you head into Big East play with a game under your belt after a week off.
They won 93-79. They shot 52% from the floor as a team, but also 11 for 19 was the number that Florida State took from distance. They landed 11 shots in 19 total attempts. Mike, we spoke about this ad nauseum the last few times, obviously, when we had Jaden Daly on, when we had a few other guys on, too, about that St. John's three-point defense that could become a problem. Obviously, right now, looking at those numbers, they do allow 31% as a team three-point defense, which ranks 4th in the Big East. We've spoken about this. We spoke about it on the Primetime Rundown last week. You know, that could seem like a problem. I'd like to get Kevin's input after Mike, but Mike, take this away first.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, the game itself was probably as close to a complete performance as you could get from what we've seen from St. John's this year. But then, like Kevin said, you had that one period where they went to the zone defense and they couldn't miss from beyond the arc. And they just have these periods, St. John's, even if the three-point defenses has been generally better this year. They always have these periods where you have another team that has a hot shooter. They get hot, they just can't seem to miss, and the game gets turned on its head.
Yeah, and Kev, now going back to you though, in terms of that 3-point defense, obviously Villanova, their identity lives and dies from distance. And this, obviously with the cupcake schedule, if you will, and for those that will see this, they might not like that term cupcake schedule, but that's been going around a lot with St. John's, and they've propelled in 11 out of the 12 games, with the exception, of course, of number 23 Iowa State. That 3-point defense, does that present itself to become a problem tomorrow night against Villanova, where, again, they live and die by the 3?
I mean, I don't see how it can. I think I saw something on Saturday when Villanova played St. Joe's. I think they made 7 threes in the first half. Now, they were trailing at halftime, I think 35-31 of that game. But look at the Florida State game. I mean, it's interesting because it's like, all right, how do you want to present it? That Florida State was outstanding, 11 of 19 from 3. But remember, one guy was 8 of 11. I mean, Darren Green Jr. was 8 of 11 from 3.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you want to pin it? I mean, I guess they did a good job on the rest of the team, but I thought Florida State's game plan was they could dice St. John's half-court defense up and get shots in the paint. And that's kind of what they did outside of Green, who made 8 three-pointers of his own.
Unbelievable stuff to see against Florida State. But going back here, Kev, to tomorrow, also obviously against Villanova, the tallest starter for Villanova, tallest 2 starters, obviously Eric Dixon and Brandon Slater, who this St. John's team they know very well. But again, they do have someone right in the middle that is going to be a big problem for them. And obviously, no pun intended, Joel Soriano. He's a couple of inches taller than the two of them. He averages a double-double overall this season, and he is a force to be reckoned with. And obviously, this is something that St. John's, the last couple of years, they have had that issue with, is a big man down low. The last man I could really think of is like a Tariq Owens that really was a force to be reckoned with down low, unless, the site expert can tell me otherwise. I don't know, Kev. This is advantage St. John's down low.
I would think so too, and I would even go back maybe Obekwa.
Yeah,
I think Joel Soriano is much better than what Tariq Owens was. Maybe Owens is a better shot blocker, obviously. Sure. So it's not a prove-it game for Joel Soriano because he has played good big men. I mean, Florida State. Now, obviously, they were without their 7-footer in Baba Miller, who's suspended for the first 16 games of the season, but they still have length. And Joel Soriano was dominant down low. He's been dominant down low all year. With Eric Dixon, I think you saw the improvement last year. You saw how much better he got as the season went on. Joel Soriano, you saw that improvement, but it's been night and day last year to this year for him. I think he does have to control the paint down low for St. John's, and most importantly, something we haven't talked about this year with him, he has to stay out of foul trouble. Because we all know how Villanova loves to shot fake, loves to get defenders in the air, and St. John's defense is built on gambling. They gamble for steals, they gamble for blocks, they gamble for everything, and that's where I think the St. John's discipline defensively is going to be tested big time tomorrow night against Villanova.
St. John's opponents this season, again, non-conference, obviously, with the exception of the DePaul game, their opponents average 16 turnovers per game. Villanova, they've been pretty clean with the basketball, Kevin. They only average a grand total of 9 turnovers per game, and that is a big number too. So obviously a little number, but big when you look in the big picture. Yeah. 9 turnovers. They are the only team in the Big East that averages single-digit turnovers. They're really careful with the basketball, but again, their opponents also they force about 15 turnovers. So Nova did turn the ball over. You brought up about that St. Joe's game too, where they were trailing at the half by 3. They turned the ball over 13 times. Are they gonna have a tough time against this St. John's team, who, as you said, they gambled defensively?
Well, here's my thing, and I think it applies to UConn a little bit, but I won't get into that. In my opinion, Villanova doesn't have a point guard. Yeah. Now they have Mark Armstrong, who, all right, I'm a little biased. Went to the same high school. I covered him in high school. And he's a freshman. He's an outstanding athlete. But, like, if Villanova's having Chris Archidiakono bring up the ball or Caleb Daniels bring up the ball, they're not a true point guard. I mean, Armstrong is more of a true point guard than that, but he's a freshman. St. John's has to get off the bus tomorrow and press. Like that's what they have to do. Now, all right, you're going to say Villanova is going to get some calls at home, and Posh Alexander, you saw it in the Big East tournament game last year. He got a couple of ticky-tack fouls, and when he went out with foul trouble, it changed the game entirely. St. John's has to press Villanova once they get off the bus tomorrow and make them prove that they can handle the ball 94 feet.
Mike, we brought up a few times, and I know we did this obviously during our podcast too, about Villanova, their home record speaks for itself year in and year out. And obviously, whether it be the Wells Fargo Center, whether it be Finneran Pavilion, this season they are 4-0. And really, they got themselves kick-started on a really good streak against Oklahoma just a few weeks ago. But St. John's, again, they come into a raucous atmosphere, a tough test. This is a real test now for St. John's, where, that ticky-tack schedule or that cupcake schedule that they played in the beginning. Mike, what do you see here tomorrow in terms of what they need to do? What's your game plan if you're Mike Anderson?
Well, like you said, Finneran Pavilion, it's been built into a reputation. It's been built into a fortress over these years, and it's still going to be something true, even now in the post-Jay Wright era. It's still, until proven otherwise, it still is a tough place to play. And I think this is really a litmus test for St. John's in terms of, you get the win tomorrow night down in Finneran, you're really going to start dreaming of what this season could potentially be. You go into a tough road environment against the Villanova team, who's been fantastic over the years, and they still have experience this year. You go in and win that game, you create a little bit of belief in that locker room that they can really take it to the Big East and go much farther along this year and finally attain that goal of the NCAA tournament. I think your game plan is it's got to be you want to replicate a lot of that Florida State game. They were patient in their offense. They didn't settle for shots. They execute. They didn't have those slow starts that has been characteristic of the season. You cannot get off to a slow start against Villanova, especially on the road. If they get off to a good start, get control of the game, and be able to force Villanova to be uncomfortable in their offense, I think they're in good shape tomorrow night.
Kev, my next question for you, Dylan Adewusu had 20 points, 5 boards, went 4 of 7 from distance against Florida State. You got to see it, obviously, in person. Is this kind of a coming out party for him? Because he did come off the bench, obviously, against Florida State. What do you see with him heading into the bulk of Big East play?
Well, you hope it's the coming out party for him because he's been around the block before. He's been in big games before. He's been in Big East play before. But in a grander scheme of things, I think it's important for St. John's to get that shooting off the bench, no matter who it comes from. Whether it comes from Dylan Adewusu, whether it comes from their two best shooters in AJ Storr and Rafael Pinzon. They need that shooting, whether it be off the bench or from the starting group, to help space the floor. Because when they don't have that shooting and when their shots aren't falling, they become much more easy to defend because teams are going to pack the lane. They're going to know they want to drive. They're going to know where they want to get into Soriano. And that's where you see the offensive fouls coming from. And that's where you see the careless turnovers coming from because you have two guards in Posh Alexander and Andre Corbello who can probe the lane basically anytime they want.
So last year, me and Kevin were sitting next to each other during this 66-65 Villanova victory in the Big East tournament on that Thursday night. And we recall this very well. And Kev, I have to ask you this. Obviously, it's in the back of our heads. It's in the back of your head. It's in the back of Mike's head. For every single returning player on that St. John's bench, do they have this game in their head going to Finneran Pavilion tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so. And Joe, I don't know how much you brought this up early in the season. We were at Media Days, Big East and St. John's, and it wasn't like a big theme that they were like, all right, this is how we're going to respond. This is yada, yada, yada. But like it was mentioned. Like I don't think many people have brought that up in the past couple of days leading up to this game, aside from your point now. But like it was certainly mentioned. It was like, all right, like we don't want this feeling again. Like we don't want this to happen again. So I don't know, at least publicly, if after the game, if St. John's win and we bring it up in a press conference, like, was this being said throughout the week? Like, I don't know if they'll specifically say yes, because I even asked Joel Soriano after the Florida State game, because you could draw the parallels from the Pittsburgh game last year to the Florida State game this year, although, like, obviously St. John's was missing their best player in that Pittsburgh game. And I said, like, was that like a point that you talked about during the week? Like, we can't let this happen again. And he was like, we know it wasn't, we talk about things from last year a little bit, but like, we didn't harp on that pit game. Like, that can't happen again. So I don't know if they'll publicly say it, but I certainly think among the returning players, which is basically the entire roster outside of Curbelo, David Jones, and the freshmen, that like they're going to bring it up that like St. John's let one go against Villanova last year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something that that we'll have to keep our eyes out for. So I'm going to bring this back to Mike. We've got two more things on the docket, and then we're going to go into the expectations as well as the predictions as well, Kev. So Nova averages 10 triples per game. Again, this is their common theme. This is what they do. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What do you see Mike Anderson doing on the defensive side of things where they can potentially hold Nova to less than 10 triples per game?
Well, I think he certainly found out from last game that you can't play a zone defense. And I think certainly you're going to look to press the point guards into turnovers, whether that's Arcidiacono or whoever's going to wind up bringing the ball up. And you hope Posh Alexander really becomes that huge difference maker and imposes his will on this game. I think this year he's kind of been very solid, but I don't know if it's been the same sort of a difference as other years, whether that's because the Big East now knows about him and knows about his ability to change the game defensively. But you'd certainly, on the defensive side of the ball for St. John's, if he really imposes his will, steal after steal, really bears down on these guards, and that extends to the rest of the defense, that will really throw off Villanova's rhythm. Maybe you'll see less threes and then be less efficient there, and that will really help St. John's.
Kev, my next thing for you, St. John's, if they were to get into foul trouble, you'll look at Villanova's free throw shooting. It's the best, one of the best in the country, 82%. How do they stay out of foul trouble? What is your game plan to keep them off the charity stripe?
Well, it's tough because it all depends on how the game's going to be called. For St. John's, they always want the referees to let them play because they want to get physical. They want to get in the passing lanes. They want to. I don't want to say they want to reach, but like they gamble. They gamble on everything. So if they get into foul trouble, I think it's kind of like hold on to your hats and hope your reserves can step up and play well. I mean, I don't think you necessarily want a Kobe King in this game if Posh Alexander and Andre Curbelo get into foul trouble. Like, I don't know if this is the type of game that you want him to play in, because we've kind of not seen him phased out of the rotation, but you kind of come to expect that, like, all right, he's not going to play as much in Big East play. I think almost the key to this game might be David Jones, because he's going to be the X factor guarding Brandon Slater, and he's also going to have to put up points for this team if they really want to pull off the upset in Villanova.
Kev first, and then Mike. Does Cam Whitmore, the preseason Big East Player of the Year, does he have his coming out party tomorrow? Granted, he did have one against Penn, 21 points, but now the competition gets higher. Kev, does he have a coming out party tomorrow against St. John's? Yes or no?
Yeah, it took us a while to get to Cam Whitmore, but he's the reason this Villanova season got turned around. Like, he was missing in all of November. Their 4-game winning streak coincides with him coming back against Oklahoma. I think he's as advertised. He's going to be a lottery pick. I think he has a big game tomorrow.
Mike, yes or no on that, or any follow-up from what Kev had?
I definitely think so. Him coming back, it just extends the depth that Villanova has and the guys that can make a difference. You see his minutes are going up. I think especially if defensively things are not going St. John's way, you see him potentially hitting a couple threes or really taking advantage of St. John's foul trouble. I definitely think he'll have a difference.
And Joe, right. I just want to add to that. In Villanova, when they lost 5 of 7 to begin the year, like, they were missing their star. Like, Colin Gillespie graduated. Jermaine Samuels is gone. They didn't have a star. They needed their role players. Caleb Daniels, Eric Dixon, Arcidiacono, Slater. They needed them to be stars, and that's not who they are. They're role players. They finally got back their star in Cam Whitmore, which allowed Caleb Daniels to take that next step and not be a role player and be an important player, but it still allowed Cam Whitmore to be the driver on this Villanova team, even as a freshman, because he's that good. It allowed everyone to go back into their roles that they were accustomed to playing throughout the rest of their careers.
Yeah, and also keep in mind about another role player, too, being Justin Moore, too. He's another one that is still out. He's tending to that Achilles injury that he suffered last year in the Big East in the I think it was it Kev,
NCAA
remind me?
tournament.
Yeah,
Elite Eight against Houston.
right. Exactly. Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was going to say, I know it was deep into March, so around that time, and he will not be back for tomorrow's game, obviously, against St. John's. So with that being said, our segment is done here. Kev, let me ask you this before you go. We're going to ask the two of you and put really all three of us on the spot here. Your prediction for tomorrow night's game at Finneran, St. John's, Villanova. What do you got? Exact score.
Oh, exact score. Oh, all right. I was gonna go Villanova by 7. So I got to do. Now you're making me do quick math. So Villanova by 7. I'll go 77-70 Villanova.
All right, Mike Szabo, what is your prediction?
I'll go Villanova by 5, 70-65.
Okay, and keep in mind also the opening line too. Villanova favored by 3.5, as per our friends at Caesars Sportsbook. I will go St. John's avenging the loss from Villanova last year. This is all in the past. This is all in the past, and that is it. All right? We completely forget about the Big East tournament from a season ago. That 66-65 loss is in the rearview mirror, and St. John's is going to dominate down low, and that's how they're going to win. Give me 72-67. St. John's wins by 5. And that means some good things for the Big East and also for Johnny's faithful out there. So, hey, listen, I mean, I'm going against Kev here. I'm going against Mike. It happens. But, I mean, hey, listen, I'm sure Kev hopes that he's wrong. That's for sure. So we got something good to write tomorrow down in Philadelphia. Oh, my goodness. Kev, thank you so much for coming on here, the site expert for Storm the Paint, which is the fan-sided home for the St. John's Red Storm. Kev, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow down at Finneran.
Joe, can't wait. See you tomorrow.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, alongside Mike Szabo, Kevin Connelly, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We will see you all after the Christmas break.